here today to do a little bit extra practice with literal and non-literal meanings that sometimes the author uses. So just a refresher, a literal meaning means that the text means exactly what it says. And then a non-literal meaning means that the text is using a figure of speech and it's not really meaning exactly what it says. So I like to use the example, it's raining cats and dogs. If you walk outside, is it really raining cats and dogs? No, sometimes the author uses that to let us know that it's raining really hard. Absolutely. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do some task cards, and you guys are going to help me figure out the actual meaning of the non-literal phrase, okay?
All right, Miss Swanger. So we're going to go through the identify questions after watching your lesson. You did a small group with some students where you were teaching them about figurative language, literal and non-literal. On a scale of 1 to 10, with 1 being the worst lesson you've taught and 10 being the best, how would you rank that lesson that you did?
A 7.
A 7?
A 7, yeah.
Okay. What pleased you about that lesson?
It was engaging and it was hands-on with the kids, and they each got to read their cards, like the meaning cards, and kind of like ask themselves, oh, does this one work with that non-literal phrase that Miss Swinger said? So I just liked how engaged they were the entire time.
Okay, I would definitely agree with you. What would have to change to move that lesson closer to 10? So if it was the perfect lesson, what would you have wanted to have done a little bit differently?
Probably, I wish I could have provided all of the kids more task cards. Like instead of just 3 for each, I wish they had maybe all of them. But I feel like that might be a little too much for them to pilfer through. So I just kind of want to think the structure a little bit differently. I like it being hands-on, but like some of them ran out of their cards faster and they were just kind of sitting there. So I think before they look through their meanings, I think next time I want to really have them discuss with each other like what they think it could mean without looking at their cards first.
Okay.
If that makes sense.
How could we measure that change in your students if we were going to kind of revamp that small group? How would you measure knowing that your students had mastered that skill?
So with the original small group, I would give them a formative to see, like, do the formative assessment, and then I look at it and measure, like, you know, take some data on that, and I would revamp the small group like I just said, and I would give them another formative to see if that made a difference in whether they mastered it or not. Okay. And if there's still some kids that are struggling, then I'd have to rethink it again.
Do you want that to be your goal for our coaching? Looking at formative data and then creating a lesson based off that data, and then after your lesson kind of going back and seeing, were my students successful?
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like that could help, honestly, throughout teaching. Not just lessons, but small groups too.
All right, so using formative data.
Yeah.
To kind of drive
my instruction.
Your instruction.
Yeah.
For your small groups. How would you know that you hit that goal? How would you know that you are successful in accomplishing that goal?
The data would just kind of prove that. Just like seeing student success with their formatives.
Okay. What teaching strategy would you use to help you hit your goal?
Modeling.
Okay.
And guided practice probably too.
Modeling and guided practice.
there's a lot of teaching strategies I could use. So should I just choose one or could I do multiple?
We could do both.
Okay.
Would you want to include any technology in any of your goal? Do you think that would enhance your student, performance in your small group? Or were you satisfied with just the paper task cards?
I was satisfied with just the paper task cards because I do have some EL students and some students that are unfamiliar with computers and stuff like that. And I feel like they would get lost with knowing how to work it without really thinking of the content.
Okay. And what do you think your next steps are after kind of watching your video, thinking about how you're going to use your formative data before teaching that lesson, and then kind of doing another formative? What are your next steps for those students that you're going to pull?
Creating the small group and really planning it out and finding some good resources, a little bit different than my small group I just used. So they need to see it in a different, multiple means of representation, like the universal design of learning.
Okay.
Because they probably need some different method, like representations of the content.
Visual sentence structure.
Yeah.
I know what you're saying. All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Swanger, for meeting with me. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.
What are your next steps for those students that you're going to pull?
Creating the small group and really planning it out and finding some good resources, a little bit different than my small group I just used. So they need to see it in a different, multiple means of representation, like the universal design of learning.
Okay.
Because they probably need some different method, like representations of the content.
Visual sentence structure. I
Yeah.
know what you're saying. All right. Well, thank you, Ms. Swanger, for meeting with me. I appreciate your time.
Absolutely.